Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Good morning.
We're learning Mishna Yevamos, Parak Tesvav, chapter 15, Mishnah Gimel, Mishnah 3. So, the previous Mishnayos have taught us that the sages approved of lesser evidence and two witnesses for a woman to be able to marry after her husband's death, where she herself comes and she says he died. Now, Mishnah Gimel starts like this. Beis Shammai Oimrim. Beis Shammai said, Tinase v'sita ksubasa. When we say that this woman can get married, not only can she get married, she can collect her ksuba. Right? Every woman, when her marriage to her husband terminates, whether through death or through divorce, he guarantees her at the beginning of the marriage in the ksuba X amount of money, typically 200 zuz, plus other things, plus additional monies. Now, if right now we are accepting we're accepting from her, and we're saying that he's dead to the point that she can remarry, then say Beis Shammai, if we're accepting from her that he's dead, then she can collect her ksuba. That means she goes to his estate, and she can collect her ksuba. Beis Hillel say, Tina say, she may marry based on her own testimony, but she may not collect her ksuba. Now, we will see soon, or we'll discuss soon, what is Beis Hillel's argument. But let's just first read further in the Mishnah. Amr lahen Beis Shammai. For Beis Shammai, the Academy of Shammai said to them, Hitartem evra chamura. You are permitting for an erva, a woman who is forbidden to marry, a woman who carries a death punishment with her cohabiting with a man other than her husband. She's an erva. Hitartem erva chamura. You have permitted the more serious sin of cohabiting with an erva. Will you not allow money that is more lenient, that is less severe? Meaning, if a person is going to be marrying a woman who's really still married to her husband, well, that carries potentially the punishment of karis, or the punishment of actually a capital punishment. That's a pretty serious sin. If it comes out that she took the ksuba, even though he's still alive, okay, so she took somebody else's money, she took her husband's money wrongfully, but that's not as serious a sin as cohabiting with another man. So if, say, Beis Shammai argued to Beis Hillel, if you're going to say that her own testimony is enough to allow her to remarry, it allows us to say, well, there is no adultery here, there is no married woman here, and you can remarry. All the more so, her testimony should be believed to allow her to collect the ksuba, which is a less severe sin if it's wrongfully done. Amr lahen Beis Hillel, so Beis Hillel said back to them, we find that brothers cannot enter his inheritance based on what she says. Meaning, if let's say she says that her husband died, and we believe her that her husband died to the point that she can be married. Now, does that mean now that his heirs, let's say in a situation where his brother, the case of the Mishnah is, achim, brothers, but it means brothers, any other heir cannot go collecting his estate, because of the fact that if you want to go ahead and take money from someone, you need two witnesses. That's what Torah says. You want to establish a matter in monetary law, and you want to take money away from someone, you need two witnesses to be able to do that. And therefore, and Beis Hillel said to Beis Shammai, we know this. We know that even though we will believe her that her husband is dead to remarry, we will not allow his heirs to go into his estate and start taking things. We're not going to allow that. That's because when it comes to taking money from someone, you need two witnesses. And that's the difference. When it comes to remarrying, the Chaim were able to decide that, her testimony is considered sufficient evidence, like two witnesses, to allow her to remarry. And when it comes to these kinds of matters, the Chachamim have the power to do that. And that's why she has the ability to remarry. But they don't have the power or they didn't use this power to go ahead and say that the brothers can go ahead and start taking his estate. So the same way we don't allow the brothers to take his estate, we don't allow his wife to go into his estate and to collect her ksuba. Because although, again, the whole reason why the Chachamim allowed her to remarry is, as we explained, Misha Miguna. We do not want her to be tied up and not be able to remarry in case he's really dead. And therefore, for this reason of not having a woman unable to remarry, therefore the Chachamim approved the lesser evidence. But they didn't do that regarding monetary law. There was no reason to have to do that regarding monetary issues, rather. There was no reason to do it. And therefore, that's the difference. Beis Shammai said to Beis Hillel, you're allowing a more serious sin. You're saying this more serious sin isn't relevant based on our evidence. Then the less serious sin of taking money wrongfully should for sure be not considered in this case, where she is saying her husband's dead. And Beis Hillel said back to Beis Shammai, no. The reason why the Chachamim allowed her to remarry was for a specific reason called the guna. We don't want the woman to be bound and not able to remarry because there's no way to know that her husband is dead. And therefore, they accepted certain leniencies, and they accepted and they said they approved a lesser form of evidence, but that has a specific reason. When it comes to monetary issues, they didn't have that reason, and we know that when it comes to monetary issues such as the brothers or the other heirs going to his estate, we don't allow them. So she can't collect her ksuba either. But Beis Shammai had a response to that. Amru lahen Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai said back to them, we can look at the record or the text of her ksuba document, and we can learn what the answer to. We can learn that she should be able to collect her ksuba. The ksuba document itself should be our basis to be able to say that she can collect her ksuba. Why? Because in the ksuba, the husband writes to her, she'im tinasi la'acher. The word literally translated means that if she gets married to somebody else, but it means that once she's eligible to marry somebody else, titli masha kasav leicha, you could take what I wrote to you. That's what it says in the ksuba. The ksuba says that once you are able to marry somebody else, you can collect your ksuba. Is she able to marry somebody else here? Yes, she is. And therefore, based on the agreement of the agreement of the ksuba says, if you can marry, you can collect the ksuba. And that's exactly what's happening here. So you're right, for the brothers to go ahead and to take the ksuba and to collect, they have no basis for that. They need two witnesses. But when it comes to collecting the ksuba, the agreement of the ksuba itself says that if you are eligible to remarry, you can collect your ksuba. And that's exactly what's happening here. That's Beis Shammai's argument back to Beis Hillel. The difference between the brothers not being able to go into his estate and her being able to collect her ksuba from his estate. V'chazru Beis Hillel l'hoyros k'divrei Beis Shammai. And Beis Hillel then retracted. They went back on what they said before, and they went on to paskin, to follow the words of Beis Shammai. So at the end here we have another example where Beis Hillel at the end retracted their first opinion, and they ruled like Beis Shammai.
This is the second time.
That's right. V'da'oid, and the Chofetz Chaim in the laws of Rechilas continues and says, furthermore, the ein chiluk be'isser Rechilas beinim hu mesaper lo beferish ma she'echad asaloi, oy dibra alav, ubein alidei mechtav. The prohibition of Rechilas is not just if you tell someone what they did or said about you. It's not just when Reuven tells Shimon what Levi did or said about him, but even if, let's say, he writes it. He doesn't go ahead and he sends him an email. He writes him a letter. He writes him a note. It doesn't have to be actual speaking. You just have to be conveying the information. That is the prohibition of Rechilas. So too, there's no difference whether you say to Shimon that Levi said something bad about him or said something about his merchandise, about what he sells. At the end of the day, by telling Shimon what Levi said about him or his property, does it create now animosity? Does it now bring animosity in Shimon's heart about what Levi said or did, if that's what it does, it's rechilas. So whether you're talking about him, whether Levi spoke about Shimon himself, Levi spoke about his merchandise, whatever, and any time you're telling someone what someone else did to them, that or said about them, or said about whatever it may be that relates to them, if that is going to cause that person to feel, to have animosity towards that person who said or did something regarding him, that is the prohibition of rechilas. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful Shabbos.
Thank you, Rabbi.